Welcome back to day 23 of Project 15. We'll be going through Genesis 38, that is the story of Judah. Pause.
G'day teenagers. Well, in our last few episodes, we have been exploring the life of Jacob and his 12 sons. Now, Jacob is the grandson of Abraham, and Jacob's 12 sons are the great-grandchildren of Abraham. And you will remember that God came to Abraham and gave him these wonderful promises that he was going to give him many descendants, and from these descendants, he was going to create this great nation who would be his chosen people, and from his chosen people, he was going to eventually bless the whole world and people from every nation, tribe, and tongue. But as we explore the stories of Jacob and his 12 sons, the 12 sons who would eventually become the 12 tribes of Israel, we notice that there's a lot of brokenness and wickedness in their life. And even when they make mistakes and get things wrong, God remains faithful to them. Now, in our last episode, we zeroed in and we started to look at the life of Joseph, who was the 11th son of Jacob, his second youngest son. And we recognized that because there was hostility and competition between the brothers, Joseph eventually gets sold into slavery, and he's going to wind up in Egypt. And this, from a historical point of view, explains how the nation of Israel actually ends up in Egypt in bondage and slavery. We're going to get to that by the end of the book of Genesis. But in chapter 38, we get a bit of an interlude where the text of Genesis focuses for a brief time on the life of Judah, who is the fourth son of Jacob. Remember, all 12 of Jacob's sons are going to become great tribes in and of themselves, and as a whole, they're going to form the nation of Israel. And this is what the text says in chapter 38. About this time, Judah left home and moved to Adullam, where he stayed with a man named Hira. There he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. So we notice that Judah ends up leaving Jacob and his brothers, and he winds up in what is modern day the central part of Israel. At the time, this region was inhabited by a series of city-states which formed the region of Canaan. So Judah ends up in Canaan, and he ends up getting married to the daughter of a Canaanite man. And it says that she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son and named him Onan. When she gave birth to a third son, she gave him the name Shelah. So far, things seem to be going well for Judah. He gets married and he has 3 sons. Now, from an anthropological point of view, the wider the family grows, the more children they have, the bigger the family unit grows, the bigger the extended family of Jacob grows, and then from an anthropological point of view, the clan grows and the tribe grows, thus fulfilling the promise that God has made to Abraham to turn him into a great nation. The more individual families grow, the bigger the tribes and the nation as a whole grows. So far the text seems to be going well. But suddenly, Genesis 38 is turned on its head, and the life of Judah is turned on its head. You see, Judah gets his first son, a wife whose name is Tamar. So we should think the logical thing should happen. Babies should be produced. The more baby making, the bigger the nation grows. But that's not what happens. The text says that is a wicked man, and he actually dies. Now, in the ancient world, not just in the world of ancient Israel, but in the ancient Near East as a whole, in civilizations like the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians, there was an ancient practice called the practice of levirate. And under the practice of levirate, if you had a widow whose husband had died before she could produce a son, then what would happen is it was the responsibility of the brother of her husband, so her brother-in-law, to take her in as a wife. So this principle of levirate, although it sounds foreign to us, it was actually about protecting the welfare of the widow. You see, if a woman died without having a son, there was no economic way for her to be looked after. There was no charity apart from the charity of her husband's household. So it was the responsibility of her brother-in-law, the brothers of the deceased, to actually take her in and become married to her and to give her an heir. Now, we should expect here that this was a way for the family lines and for the name of the deceased to actually continue. And that's how the story continues. Judah practices this custom of levirate, and he gives to Tamar his second son, Onan, with the expectation that he will have children with Tamar and the family line can continue. But unfortunately, Onan is also a wicked man, and he eventually passes away. Now, Judah's third son, Shelah, is too young to be married to Tamar at this point. So Judah promises Tamar that, look, when he's older, I will give him over to you in marriage. But as the story goes on, some considerable time passes on, and Judah doesn't fulfill this vow. So Tamar ends up being an older widow without any children or without anybody to look after her. And as time passes on and Judah's own wife ends up passing away, Tamar devises this ploy to get pregnant. It's quite horrific and revolting when you think about it. One day, as Judah is moving about, and Judah has accumulated a fair bit of wealth at this point, Tamar dresses up as a prostitute. Now, in the ancient world, in this part of the ancient Near East, widows would dress in a certain way, which would show everybody that they were widows. So she takes off her widow's garments and instead dresses as a prostitute. In the region of Canaan at this time, there were fertility cults. So you know that when there were societies who had many, many gods and who practiced polytheism, the worship of many, many gods, they would have specific gods and goddesses who were dedicated and devoted to fertility. And what would happen is these shrines in Canaan would actually have prostitutes, cult prostitutes, who men would come in and practice wickedness by sleeping with these prostitutes in the belief that they would actually bless them and bless their harvest and bless their ability to have children. So Judah winds up encountering Tamar, who has masqueraded and disguised herself as one of these cult prostitutes. It's a wicked thing that then happens. Judah then sleeps with her. So Judah does an immoral thing. Tamar also does an immoral thing. And as you read the story, you'll notice that they make an agreement. Judah promises to her that he's going to send her some cattle if she will sleep with him. And he takes off, so in this part of the world, they would wear this sort of cylinder which had a seal on it. It was their way of sort of identifying themselves. It was kind of like their driver's license, and it was kind of like their signature. They would wear this cylinder seal around their neck, and they would use it to basically sign documents and as a form of identification. So Judah takes this off and gives it to Tamar as a promise that he will send her some cattle because she is going to sleep with him. It's a kind of payment or a promise to pay her. And as the story unfolds, Tamar is eventually found pregnant and she's going to be executed, and it's revealed eventually that Judah is the wicked man who actually slept with her because she still has his seal with her. As the story unfolds, it winds up in a situation where Tamar gives birth to 2 children. Look at what the text says. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, it was discovered that she was carrying twins. So eventually we notice that Tamar is actually carrying 2 of Judah's children, 2 twins. The first one will be called Perez, and the second one will be called Zerah. So even though the whole situation was broken, even though Judah lost 2 of his sons, even though he ended up through this sinful, wicked set of circumstances, sleeping with the girl who was his daughter-in-law, she ends up having 2 sons, Perez and Zerah, who will be the children of Judah. Now again, you're probably wondering, why does all of this description, why does this description of this broken situation matter? The point that Genesis is trying to stress is even though the sons of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then the 12, even though these men get themselves in all kinds of terrible, wicked, and sinful situations, God is still sovereign. God is still faithful. God never agrees with their bad choices. God never encourages them to do bad and wicked things. But God is still sovereign. He still reconciles the situation so that the ultimate promise He has made to make the descendants of Abraham into this great nation, and from this great nation to bless all people, God will still fulfill His promises. And I want you to know that, teenagers, no matter how broken, no matter how sinful your life is, God is faithful. If you turn to Him, if you put your trust in Him, He will arrange the situations of your life ultimately for your benefit and for you to serve Him and His wider purposes. And that's what happens. Judah is a wicked man who practices all kinds of evil, but God still works things for good. Now you might be wondering, why does the text of Genesis zero in on the life of Judah when it's talking about the life of his brother Joseph? The reason being is that Judah, amongst the 12 sons of Jacob, has a special plan or a special purpose in God's plan. Judah will be the tribe through which the great kings of Israel in generations to come will actually come from. Some of Israel's great kings, David, Solomon, they will be kings who are from the tribe of Judah, from his descendants. And in fact, ultimately, the greatest king in Israel's history, Jesus, is going to come from the tribe of Judah. So Genesis 38 takes the time to describe, even though it's a broken situation, it takes the time to describe how God still gives children and descendants to Judah, because ultimately from the line of Judah and Perez, Jesus, the ultimate king of the universe, is going to come into this world, and He is going to reconcile God to the nations just as God planned from the very beginning. So I encourage you, teenagers, keep meditating on the main point of these passages, even where sometimes some of the details are difficult to understand. Let's go into a time of prayer now, and I'll see you next episode.